Live Fit Podcast, episode 144, Your Eye Health with Dr. Rani BANIK.
I think there's really a revolution going on right now in terms of awareness of, what we're exposed to, the commercials on TV or what we see in the supermarket, that how it's really not healthy. We may have certain genes that may predispose us to certain diseases, including eye diseases like glaucoma or macular degeneration. But it's the other factors that really influence whether those genes are turned on or turned off.
Welcome to the Live Fit Podcast with Glenn Johnson, your resource for all things that contribute to good health. You will hear expert advice and interviews with leading authorities on fitness, food, fat loss, mindset, and the mind-body connection. You will find show notes, articles, and health programs at livefitpodcast.com.
Yes, it is time once again for the Live Fit Podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Johnson, your guide to better health. Hip, hip, hooray! Today marks 6 years in business. This podcast has been on the air for 6 years. I started on this exact same weekend, the weekend after Thanksgiving in 2013, with a desire to see if I wanted to podcast. I knew I had the skills. I have had radio experience. I've had audio editing experience. I've had journalism experience, and I have a ton of health and fitness and wellness experience. All that together just gave me this undeniable urge and drive to share it with you because, really what my guiding light is, my compass for everything I do is prevention of preventable things, right? So that includes accidents and, most importantly, taking care of your body and your health and your wellness. Now, I don't want this to sound like I'm paranoid or anything, because I'm certainly not. I go out and have fun, and I take some moderate risk. I like to mountain bike. I like to run. I like to ride my bike on the street. I like to road cycle, and I know it's pretty dangerous with all the cars out there, and I used to race bicycles. Yet, I still consider myself somebody who is prevention-minded, and I do like to indulge in some not so healthy foods now and then, but what is the underlying compass is my mindset towards better health. Pretty much everything I do, I ask myself, is this healthy or not? Doesn't mean I'm going to deny it if it's not healthy. It just means that is my guiding light, and that is what I follow throughout my whole life. And I've been doing that since I was probably 10 or 12 years old. And I really felt that I needed to share this exciting knowledge with people that, hey, it is so much easier to prevent something than it is to try to heal yourself or fix yourself or repair or reverse what has happened. So with that in mind, I have brought you some experts from so many different fields that it's hard for me to remember. I'm going to go down my list right now. I've brought several people here who are functional medicine doctors. I even had a holistic plastic surgeon, yoga nidra meditation, one person who is all about mindset. Another person has healthy cookies, believe it or not. Then there's CBD. What else did I have? Never binge again. So for people that have binge eating problems, I had Never Binge Again coach on, Glenn Livingston. I have had somebody on here about stem cell therapy, the different stages of change with Jim and Janice Prochaska. We had an Ayurvedic doctor on here, somebody talking about the healing effects of mushrooms, biohacking, a good memory, balance and goals, brain drain, which means when you overuse your brain and your sympathetic nervous system or your fight or flight system is going on too long and it just drains your brain, you feel kind of brain dead and sluggish. These are just a few of my 143 previous episodes. Today is number 144, coming out on December 4th, 2019. And my guest is Dr. Rani BANIK, RUDRANI BANIK to be complete. And she is an eye health expert. She is going to talk about eye health today. And she is not just an expert on eye health, but she is a functional medicine doctor as well as a neuro-ophthalmologist. So she doesn't just talk a good game like don't stare at the sun. She talks about what sort of foods and drinks and nutrients are good and not good for your eyes. She's going to talk about so many things that you may never have thought of. I know when she approached me about coming on my show, I had never even thought about having somebody on about eye health. And as we mentioned in here, it's one of those things that most people don't really think about or talk about. Yet it's so, so, so important. I mean, can you imagine living without your sight? Many people have been born without sight or they've lost it. So yeah, they of course can't imagine it. And other senses will step up to kind of fill in the gaps a little bit. Your hearing gets better and other senses get better. But nonetheless, no more sunsets, no more looking at your beautiful wife's face or your children or the pretty flowers in the spring. That would be really sad. So I, for one, want to take care of my eyes because I really, really appreciate being able to see all those things. So let's hear what Dr. Ronnie BANIK has to say about how you can take care of your eye health. Welcome, Dr. Ronnie. It's a pleasure having you here today.
Well, thank you so much, Glenn. I'm really excited to be here as well. Very excited for our conversation.
Yeah, me too. When I heard that you are involved with eye health, I mean, I've seen eye doctors before. I wear glasses. I once had an eye virus, so I've seen plenty of ophthalmologists. But other than hearing that carrots are good for your eyes, I don't really know, and not to stare at the sun, I don't really know what's involved in eye health. So I'm really hoping that you can enlighten me and, of course, my listeners in the process. Can you tell us, start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are now?
Sure, absolutely. So I took the traditional route in terms of my training. I went to medical school, and then I did a residency in ophthalmology. And then after that, I actually did a fellowship in neuro-ophthalmology, which is the study of all the connections between the brain and the eyes. So how we see, how the brain processes what we see, how we move our eyes. So it's quite a few the complex pathways within the brain that are responsible for all of this. So I did my fellowship, and then I was practicing for some time. I would say almost 16, 17 years. I was in academic medicine. So I was working for medical school, basically. I was seeing patients, teaching, doing research. But what happened was I actually had a personal health issue, and it really made me kind of rethink my approach to not only my own health, but the health of my patients. And so what happened was I had very severe migraines, and this was going on for over 2 years. I had basically a migraine every single day. And, I took all the traditional, treatments that were given to me by some doctors in New York City. Some of the top migraine doctors actually just gave me prescription after prescription after prescription, and they weren't helping. And after some time, I said, you know what, I'm just going to stop taking these medications because they're either making me more sick or they're just doing nothing. So I started to research other ways to improve my own headaches. And what I found was that there are quite a few natural, or you could even call them integrative or complementary ways to deal with chronic disease, including migraine. So I started to research, and I started to implement some of the things that I learned, and lo and behold, my symptoms got better. A lot of what I did was really rooted in nutrition. And it really opened my eyes in terms of how important what we put in our bodies is in terms of our overall health. Not just eye health, but just overall health.
Right.
And I mean, I'll tell you, before I had this epiphany, I was the worst in terms of nutrition and lifestyle. So I was living off of pizza, ice cream, and diet soda. And this is being a physician. I mean, you would think twice, but no one ever taught me. No one ever taught me the importance of nutrition. And so, after I started to feel better, I said, you know what, this is really so it just really, it changed me in such a deep way that I wanted to learn more. So I started pursuing functional medicine, and I started training with Institute for Functional Medicine, or IFM. I don't know if your listeners have ever heard of IFM, or you yourself have heard of IFM, but it's a wonderful organization. And it changed not only my own life, but my career path. So I quit my job, and I decided to do this kind of full time and really dig deep into my patients' problems and approach them not just from an ophthalmology standpoint or neuro-ophthalmology standpoint, but really from more of a holistic, integrative standpoint. So that's, long story short, that's kind of how I ended up where I am today in terms of promoting, this approach to vision health. And a lot of it is rooted in nutrition. It really is.
Wow, that is really pretty cool. And it's funny that you grew up to be an adult and even went through med school, and the knowledge of good nutrition, even at a surface level, didn't quite hit you.
Yeah, actually most medical schools, I think the average number of hours that students get any nutrition training is about anywhere from 4 to 8 hours in their entire medical school training. I mean, that's really, it's a shame. It's embarrassing, actually, that our system is, or our training is built that way. So I think hopefully things will be changing with the new generation of doctors or students and I guess the curriculum. But back then when I went to school, I mean, it was just an afterthought. Nobody really thought about, how important it is what we're putting in our bodies and how it's going to impact our health. So not just high blood pressure, diabetes, but all kinds of other things. I mean, think about the rates of autoimmune disease that have skyrocketed, or the rates of allergies that have skyrocketed.
Right.
And so much of it is really based in diet, nutrition.
Well, I think it was Galen who said that let food be thy medicine and let medicine be thy food. Something like that.
I think it was maybe Hippocrates.
Was it Hippocrates?
I don't remember. Possibly, yeah.
I think you are right that it is Hippocrates. And it's just amazing. Well, they knew that a long, long time ago. At least he did. I don't know if it caught on, but it's been forgotten for sure in our modern era. And we have to keep relearning this new thing. And I don't know why it's so darn hard, because I used to give the analogy, if you had a race car, you're not going to put in kerosene in the tank or, the cheap gas from the cheap gas station. You're going to put in really fine, high quality fuel to burn in this really high quality machine. And yet when we fuel ourselves, so many of us, they don't care about what the body wants. They just care about what their tongue or their brain wants.
Mm-hmm. I love that analogy. I mean, it is, you hit it right on the spot. And, our society, at least the society we live in right now, is just so geared towards processed foods and, high sugar content and unhealthy fats. And you're right. You're absolutely right. It's all of this has been developed to satisfy our taste buds. But it's not healthy for us. I mean, it's far from it, actually. And it's really, I think there's really a revolution going on right now in terms of awareness of, how, what we're exposed to, the commercials on TV or what we see in the supermarket, that how it's really not healthy. So I always tell my patients, as a general rule for your overall health, if you can't follow all the recommendations, just do one thing. And that is try to avoid the SAD diet, which is the standard American diet. And it's not just American anymore. It's kind of spread throughout many other countries. But the standard American diet is high in simple sugars and high in unhealthy fats, trans fats, and high in processed foods. So a lot of preservatives and so forth, other chemicals in our foods. And our bodies were not meant to digest those things. I mean, it's just not good.
I had Dr. Joel Furman on the show a while back, and he called it the DAD, the DAD, the Deadly American Diet.
Oh, wow. I've never heard that one before. I think I may have to start using that.
Yeah,
Wow.
he's onto something. He also
Yeah.
has a book called The End of Diabetes, and he says diabetes and heart disease are 100% preventable and reversible. Now, of course, there is genetic dispositions, and his argument is that despite those, you can make the best of your situation rather than succumbing to the worst.
Yeah, I'm an absolute believer in that. We may have certain genes that may predispose us to certain diseases, including eye diseases like glaucoma or macular degeneration. But it's the other factors that really influence whether those genes are turned on or turned off. So it's this evolving science called epigenetics. Perhaps what Dr. Furman's book is about. I haven't read it yet, but I'll have to take a look. But what are we doing in our exposures in our daily lives that may perhaps turn on those genes and then cause disease or cause certain issues, for example, with vision, loss of vision. So, many patients ask me, they've had genetic testing done, they've gone through 23andMe or some similar type of home genetic test, and they say, oh my goodness, I have this gene for macular degeneration. Doctor, am I going to go blind? And there's this kind of alarmist kind of a reaction, and I completely understand because I did it as well, and I have one of the genes for macular degeneration. But what I try to tell patients and reassure them is that just because you have the gene for something doesn't necessarily mean that it will manifest and cause a problem, cause a serious issues. So it's important to keep that in mind, that you can be in control of what happens to your health. And again, the cornerstone is, I really believe, is diet. Of course, there are other things as well, toxin exposure and exercise and stress, which is a main driver of a lot of conditions, inflammatory conditions. So, these are modifiable factors. So the unmodifiable part is obviously your genetics, but there's so many other modifiable factors when it comes to health that we are in control of.
I saw a study recently that showed what attributes to a person's health. In other words, what percentage does healthcare attribute to a person's health? And then what percent of their habits and what percent of genetics? Do you have any guesses on how much healthcare attributes to an individual's health?
Healthcare meaning, for example, medications?
Yeah, all of it. Yeah, doctors and medication and, regular visits and all that.
Maybe 5%. I don't know.
Oh, well, you're. I would have guessed much higher than that. The number is 10%, which I found amazingly low. And how about genetics? What's your guess on that?
I would say less than 50%, maybe 30%.
Wow, nailed it right on the head. And then lifestyle, the person's habits, what they do every single day is the rest. So what are we at? 30, 40. So yeah, another 60% is lifestyle. That's crazy.
Yeah, I absolutely. It's so. I mean, I see it in my patients. When they are able to change their lifestyle and pursue that the goal of living healthier lifestyle, it makes such a difference. I mean, I have patients who, through various methods, they've been able to change their diet, or perhaps they've lost weight, or they start exercising. I've seen patients get off of their blood pressure medications, or get off of their insulin, or reduce their dependence on their cholesterol medications. And so many impactful changes can occur based on lifestyle alone. It's really incredible.
Yeah, as a health coach, I see that all the time as well. They start changing their habits, and pretty soon they find that their blood sugar is way too low, so they have to back off on their diabetes or medication, the metformin or insulin or whatever they're taking. Dr. Rani, I want to go back to something you were talking about before, and you said that we should avoid the standard or the deadly American diet. Is there any one particular food or drink or category of such that people commonly consume that is particularly bad for their eyes?
We all know that high sugar intake will predispose someone to having elevated blood sugar, perhaps even develop diabetes. So that's one thing, is to curb the amount of simple sugars that one is taking. So I also say no added sugars. So if you're having coffee or tea or whatever, please don't add any sugar to it. If it's naturally there, that's great. So as an alternative, I always suggest fruits that have a low glycemic index. For example, berries are great for eye health. So if you're going to choose a fruit, try not to choose something that's going to turn straight into simple sugar, for example, watermelon or even banana or apple. Even though they are great fruits for other reasons, if you're going to choose something great for eye health, choose berries. And the darker the berry, the better. So
why is that?
I typically, because berries have many phytonutrients, and one specific category is anthocyanins. And so these are dark pigments, and they're strong. They're very potent antioxidants. And they help protect the retina from potentially damaging oxidative damage or UV light or blue light. So the darker the berry or darker the vegetable, the better. So blackberries, blueberries, even eggplant. I mean, technically it is a fruit, but we call it a vegetable. That's great as well. Plums, cherries. The deeper the color, the more antioxidant it has, and then more anthocyanins. So again, stay away from simple sugars and try to have more low glycemic foods. That would be my general recommendation.
Is, aside from diabetes, is sugar harmful to the eyes?
Diabetes is really the main reason, because it can cause, one of the leading causes of vision loss is something called diabetic retinopathy. And that occurs when the sugars remain elevated for long periods of time, and it causes actually leakage of fluid and protein, sometimes even blood, into the retina, which then leads to vision loss. So it's, I don't know if you've heard of, or your listeners have heard of, leaky gut syndrome or leaky brain syndrome or leaky heart syndrome. Well, diabetes is a leaky eye syndrome. And it's all because of elevated blood sugar. It changes the capillaries in the back of the eye, makes them quite leaky. And so, elevated sugar is the biggest risk factor of poor blood sugar control. The other thing that elevated sugar can do in the eye is actually it can cause changes in the lens. It can actually cause a lens in the eye to swell, and it can cause people to have intermittent blurry vision, or perhaps even a blurriness that develops into a cataract. So there's specific types of cataracts that are associated with diabetes. So many repercussions of elevated blood sugar in terms of eye health. And most of it's preventable. Some of it is reversible. There are cases of diabetic retinopathy where if it's mild enough that it can be completely reversed with better blood sugar control. So, it's not kind of a be-all, end-all situation.
All right, so there you hear it. Sugar is not good for you. Do you hear that, adults and children? Sugar is not good for you. I'm kind of being sarcastic because I did an entire series on sugar, on the pitfalls of sugar. It's kind of like I see it kind of like the devil. It taunts you and makes you want it, and then when you have it you always want more, and then it makes you feel sick and gives you diabetes and all that stuff. So just one more thing that sugar's bad for, the eyes.
Yeah. I think I remember reading something in National Geographic a couple of years ago about, the pitfalls of sugar. And actually, I think they'd done some studies where sugar activates receptors in the brain, some of the pleasure centers in the brain, similar to some drugs like cocaine, for example. So it gives a certain type of high. So it is quite addictive, actually, on a biochemical level.
Yeah, Dr. Barry Sears calls it a drug. And I questioned them on that. I said, hey, but it's a food. And he said, well, there are drugs that grow naturally, marijuana and opium and, a lot of these other things, drugs that we have grow naturally. Maybe we've concentrated them as humans, but his reasoning for calling it a drug is it affects hormone levels. When you put this stuff in your body, it changes your hormone levels. And that was how he defined it. And many other things, but that was his reason for calling it a drug. So Antioxidants are good. What else is good for our eyes? What about carrots? I've always heard that it's good for night vision. Is there anything to that, or is that?
It is. No, that's absolutely true. So that's not just a myth. Your mother was trying to encourage you to eat carrots by telling you that. So carrots have a form of vitamin A called beta carotene. And this particular form of vitamin A is very important for retinal physiology and health. And it's absolutely true that if you have a deficiency in vitamin A, it can lead to night blindness. But there are other types of carotene or carotenoids as well that are very potent antioxidants, good for retinal health. So there's a class of carotenoids called the xanthophyll carotenoids. And I don't know if you've ever heard of these, but if you look at any eye health supplement out there on the market, there are many of them, probably over 40 or 50 different brands out there. Most will have two ingredients. One is called lutein and one is called zeaxanthin. And these two carotenoids are xanthophyll carotenoids because they're yellow in color. And it's something about their spectral dimension which allows them to absorb harmful rays. So they're situated in the retina and in the center of the retina, and basically they absorb some of those harmful rays. So it's almost like having sunglasses inside your eyes, natural sunglasses. Yep. And so aside from carrots do have lutein, some zeaxanthin, but the best foods that actually have high levels of these two compounds include green leafy vegetables. So, have your spinach, make sure you're having some kale or collard greens, even broccoli, Brussels sprouts. These all are high in lutein and zeaxanthin. And then also the yellow-orange vegetables are wonderful as well. So corn or maize is a great source of actually of lutein and zeaxanthin, as well as yellow peppers and orange peppers. So my typical recommendation is, with each meal, we usually most of us probably have about 21 meals in a week, try to include a different color in each meal. Different shades of green, different shades of orange or yellow. And that we will get 21 different colors during the course of the week. And that could be fruits as well. So I was talking about the anthocyanins earlier. Include those as well. And that way you'll get pretty much the whole spectrum of antioxidants best for vision health. So you don't really have to think about it too much. Just think about the colors that you're eating.
So you're saying we should eat a rainbow?
We should eat the rainbow, absolutely.
And not Skittles or Starburst rainbows.
Not that kind of rainbow, exactly.
Or M&Ms. Okay, it's official. Rainbows do not include candy. What other things do people not really know much about eye health that you've discovered?
So one thing is the potential effect of blue light. And I know that there's been a lot of controversy about blue light. So I'll just kind of talk a little bit about what blue light is and what, we could potentially do in terms of our eyes and our health. So blue light is wavelengths within a certain spectrum. It's the visible spectrum, and it's usually between 400 to 500 nanometers. And there are many different sources of blue light in our world. The sun is actually the strongest emitter of blue light that we could, that we have in our daily life.
That's why our sky looks blue.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Yep. So the sun is the strongest, but then there are other sources as well. So our screens are sources of blue light. Certain light bulbs, for example, if you have CFL light bulbs or LED light bulbs, they emit quite a bit of blue light. Not so much incandescence or fluorescence. So those are actually better in terms of their spectrum of blue light emission. So there's this controversy. Most of us are wed to our digital devices. We're spending hours and hours a day on our devices. And could this blue light that's coming from our devices potentially impact our eyes or perhaps even lead to conditions like macular degeneration or cataract or vision loss, basically in general? So there was a study done. This was done in 2018. It was published in 2018. It was done out of I believe it was University of Toledo in Ohio. And some researchers, what they did was they put some cells in a petri dish and they exposed those cells to very high levels of blue light. And lo and behold, those cells died. And so then the researchers said, oh, see, look, blue light kills your cells, and you're going to kill your retina if you have blue light exposure, and everyone should be wearing blue blocking glasses. And so they created this whole media storm, this alarmist storm that, oh my gosh, blue light is going to kill our vision. Mm-hmm. But if you actually read the article very closely, and I've read it several times since because I've had so many questions about it, the cells that the investigators took in this experiment were not even eye cells. They were not retina cells.
Oh.
They took cervical cancer cells.
What?
Because they're very easy to cultivate. They're very readily available. So they took these cervical cancer cells, exposed them to high levels of blue light, and the cells died. So what does that tell you? Well, maybe if you have cervical cancer, you should be treated with blue light. But in terms of our vision, in terms of our retina, so our retina, our photoreceptors are the cells in our retina that actually capture light, and then they transduce that to an electrical signal that gets sent to the brain. But the photoreceptors have natural ways of defending against blue light. So the lutein and the zeaxanthin I was talking about earlier, those are very important to defend against blue light. Other antioxidants, very, very important. So vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin C, these are all so important for eye health. So I guess the bottom line is blue light, there's no scientific proof that it's going to hurt your eyes or permanently damage your vision, but there could be other health consequences of blue light. So blue light can interfere with circadian rhythms. It can interfere with sleep. So that's a major issue that some of us may have, especially if we're using devices late into the night. It may be harder to fall asleep. So from that perspective, I would suggest, if someone has trouble falling asleep, if they're using their devices at night or in bed, that maybe they put a screen filter on. There's a night shift mode on some devices. There are similar modes on other devices. You can actually download a screen filter app that will block out all the blue light after a certain time, or you can wear blue blocking glasses. So there are a lot of alternatives, different options to try to protect your body from the potential harmful effects of blue light on your circadian rhythm. So that's another tip that I usually tell my patients.
You are listening to the Live Fit podcast. You can find more information about this episode, plus Live Fit's weight loss, health improvement programs, and coaching at livefitpodcast.com. See you there. What else? What are some other tips that are common that you tell patients? But I think we all know not to stare into the sun. But what else is out there that we might not be thinking of? Especially as kids, for example, because I have young kids, and I want them to keep their vision throughout their entire life. What I've done up until this point is, I can't undo it. I can, take care of my eyes going forward, but I want my kids to have good eyes forever. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would say there's a couple of other things that people can do to be proactive about their vision health. So the first thing is, you mentioned before, UV light, staring into the sun. So UV light is a shorter wavelength than the visible spectrum, and it's very, very potent. And it can really cause a lot of damage in the eyes. It can cause damage to the cornea, to the surface of the eye. It can cause cataracts, retina issues, and it can even cause certain types of eyelid cancers. So It's very important to protect against UVA and UVB rays. And so when you're buying your sunglasses, look for the sticker that says 100% UVA, UVB protection. Sunglasses may actually have a different sticker. It may say UV 400, and that's great as well. That's basically equivalent of UVA, UVB blocking. So look for that sticker. If it doesn't have it, don't buy it. And in terms of when to wear the sunglasses, obviously, if you're out on a very bright sunny day, you should try to protect your eyes from the sun. So wear the sunglasses or wear a hat. But I also, I am a strong believer that even on cloudy days, sometimes those rays do get in and they have the potential of causing damage. So I don't want to take any chances with my vision. My livelihood relies on my vision being good. So I wear sunglasses whenever I go outdoors if the sun is up. So that's one tip I usually tell patients. Another tip is hydration. Mm-hmm. So hydration is so important in so many different respects, but specifically for eye health, you want to maintain enough perfusion to your retina, to the back of the eye, to number one, provide enough blood flow back there. So hopefully that will, decrease the chances of any what we call ischemic problems or lack of oxygen problems. There are different kinds of strokes that can happen in the eye from dehydration or poor blood flow. But also, adequate hydration improves detoxification. So, getting enough, fluids in you will help your kidneys detoxify. And so it has, multiple different levels in which it can benefit people. So I typically recommend, as a general rule of thumb, many patients ask me, how much should I drink every day? And my typical recommendation is take your body weight in pounds, divide by 2, and try to have that many fluid ounces per day. It doesn't have to be only water. It could be other beverages as well. Just try to stay away from sugary drinks and also from too much caffeine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, that all needs to be taken with caution. If there's other medical issues, coexisting. So, for example, if someone has congestive heart failure or kidney issues, make sure you check with your doctor first before following a recommendation like that. But, the majority of people, they can tolerate that much hydration without any issues. So,
sure, nothing you hear on a podcast should supersede your doctor's orders.
That is absolutely correct, yes. This is general advice.
Yeah.
So this is, general kind of information. It's not meant to be specific medical advice for anyone. So please make sure that you check with your doctor before, embarking on any of these very specific suggestions that I've given.
Exactly. You were mentioning sunglasses, and you said when you're outside and even on cloudy days. What about inside a car or a house where the sun is coming in through the window? I've heard that the glass blocks the UV light. Is that correct?
It all depends on what type of windows you have. Many windows do have they have the UV protection on them, but some don't. So
like a car window.
A car window, yeah. Especially if it's tinted, then you can presume that it's got the UV protection in there. So I would would take it kind of in an individual situation in context, whether it's, necessary or not. But my general recommendation is when outdoors, not so much indoors, but really when outdoors. And of course, sunlight is good for you. It's not all bad. And sunlight helps us convert our vitamin D into something that we can use. So it's absolutely good for us. And there's also, a trend of light therapy being used, so different wavelengths of light being used for different medical conditions. And actually some forms of blue light, specifically longer blue light wavelengths, are used for conditions they're used to treat conditions like seasonal depression. So I'm not saying that all light is bad for you. I'm just saying that with just to be careful with certain wavelengths of light, or too much exposure to certain wavelengths of light is really important.
Hey, Dr. Ronnie, I remember growing up and my mom or grandma would always say not to read in dim light because I was over in some corner and I was reading and everything was fine. And they said, you're going to hurt your eyes if you don't have a bright light aimed right at the book you're reading. Is there anything to that?
Mm-hmm. Great question. And actually, I'm sure many of us have been told that by our parents, that dim lighting is bad for your eyesight. So the truth is that dim lighting is not going to cause any permanent damage to vision. So, you're not going to really permanently, decrease any vision, but it can definitely cause symptoms of eye strain. So, it's definitely more difficult to focus, especially on small print if you're reading in dim light. So just a couple of tips, just make sure that your light source, whatever it may be, is directly over your reading material. So not just coming from an angle, but right on your reading material. And that will help to kind of mitigate some of these symptoms that people can have when they're reading in dim light. So it is a myth, but it can, on the other hand, cause just some mild discomfort.
And what about something like watching TV at night? I know a lot of people like to watch TV in a darkened room. Should they have a light on near the TV on that side of the wall or behind them or not at all, or does it matter?
So that's a really interesting question. So as far as I know, watching television or looking at a screen slightly further away, you can do it in dim light. That's not a problem. But what I actually want to let your listeners know is that there is this condition whereby a smartphone, using a phone in bed at night, with the bright light from your phone, trying to read for a long period of time, that can actually cause some temporary loss of vision. And it's actually quite a scary phenomenon, but fortunately it's not serious. It can actually cause loss of vision in one eye, the eye that's looking at the phone. For example, if you're lying in bed on your side and one eye is kind of hitting the pillow and it's closed and the other eye is what you're using to read, that eye can temporarily actually go blind.
Really?
Even just for a few minutes, it can actually go completely black. And it's called smartphone blindness, and it was actually reported in the New England Journal of Medicine a few years back. And, it's thought to be because the eye that's, against the pillow, it's not seeing, it kind of, the retina in that eye becomes super sensitive, and the other eye kind of has decreased sensitivity. So it's because of this change or this difference in sensitivity to light that people can actually lose vision for a very brief period of time. So again, it's not serious, but I would advise not doing that. If you're reading in bed, just make sure you're kind of sitting up a little bit propped up so that one eye is not closed and the other eye is open.
Wow, that's very interesting. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, and actually it's funny. I read about it, I heard about it in a couple of patients, and then my sister came to me and she said, what do you think about this? This happened to me the other day. I was reading in bed and my vision just went completely black and I was so scared and I thought I was going to call you in the middle of the night. And I said, don't worry, it's smartphone blindness. It's a real thing, and unfortunately it's just temporary. So it's just the eye kind of adapting to light, the two eyes adapting to light at different rates.
Which brings up another point. What do you think about looking at smartphones, especially at night? You were saying before that the blue light stimulates you and that it keeps us awake, right? So is that the same as a TV looking at a smartphone?
It is. And, all of these devices, whether it's a TV, computer, tablet, or phone, they all emit blue light. And it can disrupt your circadian rhythm, so it makes you not fall asleep as easily because it suppresses melatonin. So, there's a whole cycle from between our eyes and our brain and a sleep center, basically. So I would advise, the general recommendation is to try to avoid using devices right before bedtime, and some people even say 1 or 2 hours before bedtime. And I know that may not be practical for many people because, we love staying connected until right before we go to bed. So if that is, if that's the situation, just maybe try to use a screen filter or wear some blue blocking glasses if you're using, if you're watching TV at night or, using your phone at night. So there are ways to get around it so it doesn't affect your sleep too much.
Blue block glasses, yeah. And speaking of glasses, I wear glasses pretty much full time. I do when I'm looking at a computer, and I do when I'm driving, but I don't need to for middle distance, like anything that's like 3 to 8 feet away from me, I can see quite well. And so normally I walk around the house without my glasses on. I get up and I put them on just before I leave for work, and I can drive without them. It's just not comfortable, and I can't read the signs. So as long I can, it's not unsafe. Is it beneficial for me to have my glasses off at times? Does it help exercise the eye? And if I were to leave them on 100% of the time, would that weaken my eye? I think that might be one of those other things I heard, like reading in dim light. Is there anything to that?
Yeah, so based off of what you're telling me, you can see well for intermediate, but not so far for really far distance. Probably you have some mild to moderate myopia. And myopia is basically nearsightedness, which means you see things up close pretty well, but not so well in the distance. And in that situation, if your eye is normally, the focal point of your eye is, let's say, 3 feet or 5 feet, it's perfectly fine to walk around without glasses. But, if you're driving, if you really need to have that crisp, sharp vision for very far distances, you really should be wearing your glasses. So, people wear them, in the car, or if they're out on the street, they need to see the signs, or if they need to see street signs, if they're walking on the street, for example, it is very helpful. So in terms of that, I would ask your ophthalmologist or optometrist, when is it appropriate to wear the glasses? And because not all people need to wear glasses all the time. It really depends on what their prescription is. And some people, they may need it for only far distance, or some people only may need it for up close, or other people may need it all the time. So it's a discussion that you should have with your eye doctor. When is it appropriate to wear the glasses? Now, the second part of that question is, if you wear them, are you going to be or if you don't wear them, are you going to be hurting your eyes? And the answer is really no. It's just that, you won't be able to see as well. So in some situations, it could be a safety issue. Again, if you're driving, you're not seeing well, it's not the best thing not to wear your glasses. Or let's say you're on the street and you need to cross the street, you need to see well to be safe. So in that situation, I would say absolutely wear your glasses. So I hope that answered your question.
So if I understand you right, so if I understand what you're saying is that it doesn't really matter whether I wear them or not as far as my eye health is concerned. It's strictly a comfort and safety issue.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
yeah. So if you don't wear them, it's not that your vision will necessarily deteriorate. I think that was the kind of the base of your question.
Or
correct?
if I do wear them all the time, will my vision deteriorate because they are relying on the glasses and they're not having to stay as fit as they can?
Mm-hmm. So that is another myth. Many people believe incorrectly that wearing glasses will actually worsen your eyesight or weaken your eyesight. And I just want to explain that what glasses do is basically they optically correct kind of an imperfection in the cornea or the lens. So it allows the image to be focused directly onto the retina instead of in front of the retina or behind the retina. And so glasses are really a crutch, and they help you see better. They don't necessarily worsen eyesight. Now, vision may worsen on its own. For example, if the eye changes shape over time as we're growing, as the children are growing, for example, the eye can change shape. So in terms of that, the prescription may potentially get worse or it may change, but it's not because of wearing glasses. And I kind of liken it to, if you, let's say you hurt your ankle or you hurt your foot and you're using a crutch, you can use the crutch to help you get by. It helps you certainly walk better and not be in pain, but it's not necessarily going to affect the healing of your ankle. So wearing glasses is not necessarily going to affect, I shouldn't say the healing of your eye, but just the status of your eye and the power of your eye, let's say, for example. So I hope that clarifies a little bit more.
It does.
The other great myth that people have is that if they wear glasses, their vision will worsen.
Right. And speaking of exercise or exercise for the eye or keeping the eye fit and sharp, is there any exercises a person can or should do for their eyes? I know we exercise our bodies and our minds and our hearts and our manners and all these other things. What about eyeballs?
Yeah, so if you go online and you Google, eye exercises, a whole bunch of different websites will come up. And the truth is that, in our daily lives, we're constantly scanning our environment. We're making small movements, large movements to scan our environment, things that may catch our attention, or we're, looking to cross the street, for example. So we are normally exercising our eyes all the time. So there really is no need to do any additional exercises to maintain vision health. The only circumstance I'll say in which eye exercises are helpful is if someone is reading and if they start to have a little bit of blurriness or double vision. In that situation, yes, exercises are definitely helpful, and there's a specific type of exercise called pencil push-ups, which your doctor may recommend. But that is pretty much the only situation where exercises in a day-to-day kind of, within someone's routine day-to-day would be really helpful. But otherwise, we're already normally exercising our eyes, pretty much all the time we have our eyes open, we're exercising them. So there's no need to do anything additional.
Yeah, I heard that if you're looking at a computer screen for a while, you should look at a different distance now and then, like look away, look out a window or something at a far distance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's I think I may have alluded to this before, but the 20-20 rule is basically if you're going to be on a device for a long time, if you're reading for a long time, just every 20 minutes, close your eyes and give your eyes a break for 20 seconds. Or the alternative is to look away. And as you said, look out the window or look at something in the far distance, and that will also kind of relax your eyes and let you, improve your endurance when you're reading. So every 20 minutes, take a 20-second break, either close your eyes or look away. I actually prefer closing your eyes because that allows your eyes to be better lubricated. So it allows the tears to kind of coat your eye and soothe your eye a little bit more. So, but either is fine. whatever people
Interesting.
prefer.
Okay. What else do we need to know?
So let's see. We didn't talk about some other vital nutrients for eye health. I know we talked a lot about antioxidants, but there's a couple of other things that I'd like to share with you and your listeners that would be very helpful for eye health. So that is making sure you have enough omega-3s in your diet. And the reason for this, it's actually there's several reasons for this. So the retina in the back of our eyes is actually composed of lots of phospholipid membranes. And these phospholipid membranes are made out of omega-3 fatty acids, so DHA and EPA. And actually, the retina, by percentage, has the highest level of DHA in the body.
Oh, wow.
So more than the brain even. The brain has quite a bit, but the retina actually has more, the highest concentration of DHA in the body. And the retina is constantly replenishing itself. So it's constantly regenerating its phospholipid membranes. So it's very, very important to have an adequate intake of omega-3s.
How much is adequate?
It's best to get that through whole foods. I usually say 2,000 milligrams a day, but again, that's a general kind of a guideline. Each person should, talk to their doctor to find out what's appropriate. On the other hand, omega-3s, too much can sometimes potentially increase the risk of bleeding. So if someone's already on a blood thinner, they may want to be careful with that and maybe tone that amount down a little bit. Mm-hmm. The other great benefit of omega-3 is that it's really, it's wonderful for dry eye as well. And so many people suffer from dry eye. It's very prevalent, even in younger people, even in kids. Some kids have dry eye, and it does tend to be more common as people get older, especially women after menopause. They're very likely to have dry eye. So there are a couple of studies out there which looked at omega-3 intake in terms of prevention of dry eye, and there was actually a very large study called the Women's Health Initiative. And they found that the women who had higher dietary intake of omega-3s actually had less dry eye. And then subsequently there were a couple of other studies that came along that looked at supplements, so omega-3 supplements for treatment of dry eye. And so the results have kind of been equivocal. There are a few studies that show that it benefited. Then the more recent study published last year in JAMA, which showed that it wasn't. So the jury's still out on that one. So I think the take-home message is have omega-3s, and it's best if you get it from natural foods rather than taking a supplement.
Gotcha. So taking the fish oil pills is not nearly as good as eating the fish.
I think so. Fish, or there are other sources as well. So hemp seeds, chia seeds,
walnuts, flax,
walnuts, nuts. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So antioxidants, beta carotene, omega-3s. What else?
Let's see. I think we covered most of our bases. So in terms of antioxidants, there's a couple of other ones which we didn't mention. So glutathione is a very potent antioxidant, and another one is alpha-lipoic acid. Now, the body typically makes both of these antioxidants, and if you take it as a supplement, usually it doesn't get absorbed very well, but regardless, there are some good food sources that people should know about. So in terms of glutathione, avocados are wonderful as a source of glutathione, as well as nuts. So I would suggest maybe, half an avocado a day or a handful of nuts every day. Almonds, you can rotate between almonds, pistachios, cashews. Those are the best types of nuts for eye health. And then alpha-lipoic acid, unfortunately, there's really no great food source for it. So, if you've been diagnosed with an eye issue, for example, if you've already been diagnosed with something like glaucoma or macular degeneration, it may be best to go ahead and take a supplement that has alpha-lipoic acid in it. Now, it's usually combined with many other things for eye health, so it's hard to find it on its own. But that may be something that people may want to consider.
Well, this is fantastic. You are a wealth of knowledge. And how are you using this knowledge professionally? Do you have a clinic, or are you seeing people remotely, or working with them remotely? Mm-hmm. What's your business?
Sure. So I actually have a brick and mortar office. So I see patients, and I'm based in New York City. And I do also offer telemedicine, kind of I guess you could call them consults, but I work with, if someone can't travel to New York to see me, then I do work with their local provider, whether it's their ophthalmologist or neurologist or optometrist. I work with their local doctor to kind of optimize their eye health. So whether it's with some patients need to take medications, whether it's some recommendations on medications, or whether it's certain specific nutritional recommendations or lifestyle recommendations, I'm very happy to work with people remotely. I do offer Skype consultations if anyone's interested. And then I'm actually quite active on social media as well. So I share a lot of important tips on eye health as well as brain health on both Facebook and Instagram. So on Facebook, I have two Facebook groups. One is called Envision Health, and that's EN Vision Health. So that's where I share most of my eye health tips. And we didn't get a chance to talk about this, but I also take care of a lot of migraine patients. So headaches are another one of my my specialties, being a headache sufferer myself. So I also have a second Facebook group called Eye on Migraine, and I invite any of your listeners to request to join, because I do share a lot of great tips on natural approaches to migraines as well. And then on Instagram, I share recipes, I share other types of information. So again, please feel free to reach out to me. You can also visit my website and contact me through there as well.
What's your website?
So my website is my full name, which is RUDRANI BANIK MD.com. And if you'd like, I could spell it for you.
I will have it on my show notes page so people can go there and simply click on the link. I'll make sure that I have it spelled correctly and that the link works. I will also have your social media links on my show notes page at livefitpodcast.com, and this will be episode 144. Is there anything else you want them to know?
I would say just have a balanced diet, include all those, healthy foods that we talked about. The other important thing is, really to be proactive about eye health, and don't wait until something happens, because sometimes there are conditions that are really initially asymptomatic, and people have silent disease without knowing it. They go years and years without being diagnosed. By the time they're actually diagnosed, it may be irreversible. It may be too late to try to fix the problem. So make sure that if you're above the age of 40, that you do go see your eye health provider, either every year or every 2 years, depending on your own eye health status and also your family history. So, it's really preferable to see an ophthalmologist. Of course, you can see an optometrist as well for glasses and basic checkups. But to get the comprehensive medical exam, the medical ophthalmic exam, I do encourage your listeners to go see an ophthalmologist every year or two.
I've never heard that before. I see the optometrist, and I have seen ophthalmologists, but it's not a regular thing. So thank you for that information. Thank you for all this information. The information on the nutrients that are good for the eyes right there is worth the price of this podcast. Do you have a book or anything? Are you trying to reach?
Yes. So I am almost finished with my first book, which is an integrative approach to macular degeneration. And so it should be coming out early 2020. So Preserve Your Vision, 2020 and 2020, something like that. I haven't decided on the title yet. But I'm going to be talking about a lot of these approaches, the integrative approach to vision health. And so this is for people who either have a family member with macular degeneration, or they feel like they're at risk. They've been told they're at risk. So it's basically what they can do to prevent it from happening. And it's all science-based, evidence-based. So,
I'm a big proponent of being proactive and prevention. And, that old adage that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure is so important to really, really, really realize and understand. A silly example is when you're at a stop sign or a stoplight, and the light turns green, do you just go forward, or do you turn your head from the left to the right before you stick your neck out into that intersection? It doesn't take a lot of effort to look left and right to check to make sure it's clear. The light doesn't know if it's clear, but if you don't do that, you could get clobbered really badly, and there's no going back. There's no take backs. Whoops, let's do that again. I'll look this time. So that's an example of how important prevention can be, but it's the same with your eyes. Like you said, sometimes it goes too far and it's not reversible.
So happy to share what I know. I know that, it's not a topic that often gets talked about, but, from being in the field for almost years and seeing how important these factors are, you have control over them. And if you can do something about it, it's really important to protect your vision because it's a gift. We're given this gift and we take it for granted when we really shouldn't. So I do encourage your listeners to be proactive about their vision.
Well, Dr. Rani, I really appreciate you taking the time to enlighten my listeners and